It's 6:30. We're gonna go ahead and start. I'd like to thank everybody for coming out today. Just so you know, you are being recorded. And if you're online, your participation is also going to be recorded, just so you know. Let's go ahead and have a roll call of members.
Thank you. Joel Samuelson,
Present.
Barry McManaway,
Present.
Dan Osborne,
Present.
Jerry Seiler,
Present.
John Houghton, Chester Goot,
Yes.
John Miller, Bob Cooper online.
No.
Okay.
All right. Let's rise for the pledge of allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And I'll also entertain a motion for the approval of the March 19th, 2024 minutes. So moved. Second. All those in favor, same sign.
Aye.
I'm gonna abstain because I wasn't here. And it sounds like this month again, we're going to have to table because the gentlemen want to table it for another meeting. So the May 21st, 2024 is when we're going to have hearing. So we're going to go ahead and case these for right now. So I'd like to just make a motion for each individual one, right?
Yeah.
So for case number 2024-P03, tabling it for this month and coming back to it in May.
There's a motion to be to have it May 21st for the next meeting.
Make that motion for page 2024-P03.
For a second.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. Motion carries. And then for the next one, the motion for the P04.
I move that it be tabled and taken up at our next meeting on May 21st. Is that the date?
Correct.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? I'm 4, sorry, I'm gonna say that. All right, and now we're moving on to TRC review.
Just off the top of my head, I don't have a formal report. We're having actually 3 TRC meetings this month. We've had one on the 4th, we had one on the 11th, and we're going to have one next week on the 25th also. I'll have more detail on that with my building commissioner report when we get those taken care of. I would like to take a little time, and I hand these out. Should have enough for everybody. I did just right. I just want to talk about Article 6 in our ordinances. It shouldn't take long. As you know, we're working on updating our ordinances, specifically Jeanette Cerisi's updating our ordinances to make sure we're compliant with Indiana State Code. And with that, we are giving and have given some recommendations to her of what we'd like to see in our ordinances. A lot of what we've had in our ordinances are typo things that have to be corrected. Some of you are familiar with that. So I want to talk about this one as we move forward. This is Article 6. There's not a lot here, but there's some questions I have for you and for you to consider as we put the new ordinance together. And first of all, in Article 6, Section 10D, Development Standards, so accessory structures, and this isn't in all districts, but accessory structures shall not exceed 16 feet in height unless specifically permitted in a given district. We measure from the ground to the peak. It's 16 foot from there. So there's 2 pictures of garages here with the heights of some of our new pickup trucks that are out there that people can buy from their dealers. The question I have is, before we move forward, and this is absolutely your call, is a 16-foot still a good height if you want to park from the side versus drive in from the end?
Like you're saying with the higher trucks, they want to put a row of lights on, it's gonna restrict them being able to put a garage door on a particular side of a structure that's only 16 feet high.
So I keep in mind too, that depends on the peak, on how big of a garage door you can put in.
Mhm.
The less pitch you have,
Okay.
the taller you can make your sidewalls. So what we measure, and there's different ways, I've talked to people in different communities, there's different ways to measure. This is an easy way, but there's other ways to measure. It can be the sidewalls that get measured. It can be, some places will measure halfway up through, as you get in the peak, they'll measure halfway up
Right.
that as your measuring point. I don't want to complicate it, but I just want to throw it out there to see if everybody's still comfortable with leaving it that, or if you have any other thoughts that I should put into this.
My question is, what was the intent of restricting the 16 foot?
I don't know.
I mean, that would be my question. Okay, Kevin,
The intent was there were so many places, particularly around the lake.
Sap, can we get your name and address
Kevin Berger,
for the record?
what address do you want? 402 North Slade Street. How's that?
Okay.
The intent was basically because of so many garages on the lake were having second stories put in and living spaces put in that couldn't be monitored by the building inspector because the building was already built. They'd go in and put them in. So the idea was by bringing the height down, there wasn't room for a second story in those spaces. And that was a discussion that got to the 16 foot. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but that's where it came from.
no, I appreciate that, because I do remember something about that. I couldn't remember. That's the reason I asked the question. But do we have a height that would still stop that, or the 16 foot, you think?
Well, I think they used 16 foot because you couldn't get two 8 foot ceiling places in there at that point because it would be so low. By the time you put the floor joists in and everything to make it happen for a second floor, it wasn't a usable space. And that's what they were trying to prevent.
So if you raised it, let's say 2 feet to 18, is that still limiting them?
It would limit them, but not as much. And then if you didn't do the oversized downstairs to handle a garage, you kept it down, most garage doors are 7 foot tall.
Right.
So you're looking at 7 foot plus 18 inches, 8'6" inside. Then you put 12-inch floor joists in to go up to the next floor, and you're judging how much you want in there. They were doing bigger garages and doing like the room in the rafter type of situation where you had the knee walls and the space up to the peak.
Right.
So that's what the discussion was. Let's make it so it can't be 8 foot at the peak, which is standard for most residential.
My guess is this would be hopelessly complicated for you to adjudicate. Would it be possible to specify the height of the sidewall and then separately specify the how much farther the peak can go above the sidewall? So you can have a
Well,
9 foot wall, but then you can't go.
tit for tat, same thing regardless.
Yeah,
But it becomes the issue is when you're looking at it from the outside, you can't tell what's going on in the
I
inside.
was guessing.
I could put in what I would call a room in the attic truss that has a larger heel at the bottom of it. So it looks like part of the sidewall and it gets me the space up above.
A little bit.
So there's different ways of doing it. It's just what you want to be able to monitor, and that was the problem.
Could you monitor, I'm sorry, Norman. Could you monitor the sidewall height and, Kevin Dante, 715 on Glory Drive, you know me. Can you monitor the sidewall and then stipulate the pitch of the roof to try to control the height?
You could.
And that would provide, so you can monitor the sidewall height to try to accommodate for the garaging and then prevent any type of secondary structure by making it a narrow pitch roof.
But you've already can do that now and gain the height downstairs if, you can stay into the 16 feet by lowering the peak too.
That's
So you can
right.
already do that. So it's not a sidewall issue. It's total construction issue.
So there's also an option somebody could ask for a variance if needed. also.
That was my.
Maybe that's what we should leave it at,
Maybe we should just leave it like it is.
It's just the BZA.
Yeah, we'll leave it up to BZA.
So some of these things I'm throwing out at here are just things that have come up. And just on that note, so we'll leave that alone is what I heard.
Yeah.
And on that note too, I do get calls periodically regarding people wanting to put apartments above their garages.
Right.
And a lot of times that's going to take zoning for them also. So I'll move on. Construction standards. So Culver has its own building code. In this one, my proposal is that we ultimately do away with our building code and and copy what the county's doing actually, and just reference the international and these codes that the county's building inspector who's inspecting the buildings here in town is using versus our building code that he's not using and may not know exist. This has been going on for a very, very long time. So my proposal is just to reference these codes. By doing so, by referencing these, we won't ever have to worry about updating our building codes because they'll automatically be updated as these international, national, state, whatever codes. As these get updated, they just automatically update then, and we don't have to maintain something.
Which your building commissioner, building inspector would probably looking at these anyway, then it's ready as long as our ordinance don't hold back. I agree with what you're doing.
And it seems making it a lot more flexible that way for updating.
Yeah, it takes updating out of the town's hands.
Exactly.
So I just need to know if that's something you'd like me to move forward with also. And if you'd like to do that, remember, this is all again be gone through again by an attorney.
The one thing I would say, if this does become part of our code, is there a website or a phone number that if somebody's looking through our book and they get Culver zoning, something we can addendum this so they can go reference what the International Building Code edition with Indiana amendments is?
We can attach that to the town website along with the zoning ordinance. Because that's a great idea to provide that link.
Yeah.
That's a nice service to the people.
Yeah.
So right now, as far as like your, as far as like electrical codes, as far as our ordinance, don't ever have anything to do with electrical. It's according to Marshall County building inspector. Right? So if they don't meet.
He's NFPA 70E, the National Electric Code. And that's what he's going to use.
Yeah. And that's what I say. I mean, as far as even the wording, they're not, if it's not on the same page as what the zoning says, then nobody can do it. Am I correct?
It is. And again, the county building inspectors inspecting everything in county except Plymouth and its zoning districts. He's got the rest of the whole county
Right.
and he's doing all the things the same way.
Is county code drastically different from Indiana amendment code?
This is copied and pasted from the county.
Okay.
I mean, I know working in construction, I mean, there's times that the codes were upgraded and as a builder, we didn't get that information until after the building.
But it is on the builders to know that since that's their
Yeah,
job.
the building inspector came and, you know, hey, it's not up to code anymore.
Yeah.
So all I need to know is if I should move forward.
I say move forward.
You want to vote on that?
I don't think,
Do we need a vote?
I don't think,
So,
you can make a motion for me to move forward with that, yes.
just before we do that, do you want to go through the other changes and then,
All at once?
well,
if we got your.
because I'm thinking just flipping ahead here, we're gonna have about 17 motions here versus what sounds
So
like it could be
The recommended
Uh,
updates for Article 6?
commission recommends the town council adopt the proposals that you recommend.
Through the ones we don't.
Yeah.
Agree with.
And
Makes more sense.
Just do it one fell swoop.
thank you. Okay, on the next page. Section 050, permit applications, erosion control plan and permit issuance. So it's just some language change here. It start with no person shall begin to land disturbing activities subject to this chapter prior to submitting an erosion control plan and approval. It takes out the other language and paying a fee for such permit. So they can't do anything until they've submitted this and paid their fees. So I don't let anything go through without the fees being paid now.
Okay.
So the fees are paid.
Yeah, I don't let it go through unless they pay. I mean, I won't, there's a lot of work that has to be done, and if I start doing legal notices and publishing and the town has a lot of money in it and they back out, then we waste the town's money. So I make sure that they have to pay before they can move forward. In this case, it's just, I think this just clarifies some of the language. And for instance, on the second paragraph, submitting an erosion control plan, it used to be submitting an application erosion control plan. We used to have an erosion control plan that's put into part of the building permit system. It has to be submitted if someone's doing some land disturbing activity. It's already part of the plan. So this just aligns with what we're currently doing.
Right, not changing them. To make them a little plainer.
And then in section 2 down below, or the review of the erosion control plan, it's in all these cases, it says the building commissioner. Actually, this is being vetted through the county planning director. So it still gives the town the ability to do that, but it's also being more specific towards the county plan director who's actually vetting it. If the erosion control plan is not there, then it gets kicked back to me.
Okay.
And on the third part, I want to add one, I know you can't see the whole thing, but permit conditions. And I want to add one condition to those permit conditions. That's comply with Indiana stormwater permitting rules also. We don't list that anywhere, and it is a requirement. The contractors know that when they're doing these jobs.
All permits.
No, this is going to have more to do with when. Yeah, yes and no. It depends on the job
Yeah.
and what they're doing. But they still, regardless, it needs to be in there that they comply with it. And if they don't have to do anything for Indiana stormwater, fine. I believe that falls under stormwater, rule 5.
Where will that permit come from?
So it's part of the building permit process. Yes. There are times where they have to get this, for instance, the dunes.
To the state
uh,
to get the permit to.
Depends how much land they're disturbing. So like the dunes or the executive storage buildings, both of those have state permits.
If you have a natural ditch, water run up on it, you have to look at these.
A lot depends on how much area you're disturbing. That's typically going to be what they look at.
On the side question outside of all this, are you saying that basically that currently the dunes and the, well, dunes going forward, but the storage facility, the executive storage facility does comply with Indiana stormwater permitting rules or?
They do, yes.
Okay.
They ran perk tests, they ran through the item, the plan.
That item actually gives them approval.
Is it also just because it was so close to the water treatment facility?
It's more, no, it has to do with the amount of land that's being disturbed.
I imagine.
So if you're good with this, just adding this language in here.
Yeah.
Okay, the second part. I talked briefly with Joel about this. I don't like it, but I want to throw it out there to make sure you all know this is here. General provisions under fences, hedges, and walls. The only place hedges is ever mentioned in this ordinance currently is in this first sentence, fences, hedges, and walls. So we have an option if we want to add the term hedges in here. Here's, I throw this out there because it's what I need to do. I don't like it. It's not going to be enforceable. If we have to go out and make sure everybody's hedges are only 7 feet tall, 50% visible through them, and follow those rules. It's just not enforceable, but I needed to make sure you're all aware that it's not in there, and I think we should leave well enough alone. But again, this is up to you. It's just, I need to make sure I point it out to you.
So I have a question. There, the bolded language that said, that's just caption, fences, hedges, walls permitted in required yard setbacks. Is that how it reads in the current ordinance?
It is.
And then, okay, I see what you're saying. So that's the only place hedges are mentioned.
Yeah, and when it gets into the detail below, it's never, the word hedge never comes back up.
Okay, yeah, because then I was reading as, I guess Jeanette suggests that we might amend this, and I was like, yeah, hedges, I don't know.
If we leave well enough alone, it gives us gives us a lot more latitude.
I'd be interested.
You're saying not put the edge anywhere else or just.
I'm saying do not, yes, I'm saying do not add it in there. I put it in here in bold just so you can see what it would look like. But again, it's something that's in the title of it and it's not in the body, so I wanted to point that out as we're revamping or going through our ordinances.
Yeah, I'd just be interested in what everybody else thinks, because if the sense of the commission is like, yeah, it shouldn't be in there, then I would say, well, let's take it out of the
Take
caption.
it all, take all the way out.
Because it's just asking for
Yeah.
trouble.
Right.
We're gonna leave it.
I agree with that. I agree with Don.
I
That's,
think
that's
if we
good.
leave it in the A part of the
No.
time, then I think it ought to be added. If we take it out at the
Mhm.
top,
Let's take it out of everything.
I mean, I don't think it'd be a problem. I would take it.
Are we aware of any problems with hedges?
But like,
Not yet.
But I know we passed up on, I don't think hedge.
This could turn into a Stuart England thing when they start.
Yeah,
so preserving rights against self-incrimination, suppose a person hypothetically had a row of, let's say, pine tree or arborvitae along Academy Road. Would that constitute a hedge, or is that a row of trees?
That was a hypothetical that I was having as well, where if it's a row of pine trees that grow close enough together to obstruct view,
Uh-huh.
is it considered a hedge or does it have to be contiguous and one solid flat front? Because then you have to start getting into the definition of what a hedge is.
I mean, historically, a hedge meant
but,
things that have been made to grow together, just as you said, yeah.
but at the same time.
Give me a right proper edge there.
You're putting the blinders up, I mean, as far as hedges, whatever,
Yeah,
you're still gonna be restricted to your setbacks from roads that enter it, and that, egress and.
yeah, no.
Good problem.
As far as blocking the road, I'm seeing on the other side of the road, I don't know about that.
So what would you like me to do? Take it all out?
I would take it all out,
I'd say so.
but I am self-interested.
I agree.
That may be a, more I think about it, more I would rather have them.
They probably voted.
Yeah, I know, I'm just saying,
I,
for the sake of whatever.
Hey, Kevin Dante, 7-1. Would this be, Steve, gentlemen, would this be covered under a nuisance ordinance, the same as the grass? If we have an issue with a hedge that's obstructing view or has become unruly? We'll call it an unruly hedge. Could I not issue an ordinance violation for nuisance?
You want it?
Right.
Pardon?
You want it? I'll give it to you.
I'll take it on.
that's actually what I
I
was
can't
going.
write enough nuisance letters in the summer.
Okay.
It was one of those situations that I was going to bring up after this was if we remove it from this particular fencing and walls and start designating it as its own thing, do we want to have a particular ordinance of, let's say somebody has a traditional hedge that just becomes like a nuisance hedge.
Overgrown.
I think it went too far into
The
the.
nuisance ordinance is general enough that we can envelope this thing into it without any kind of issue. It'll be
Okay.
fine.
Yeah,
So section A then, I hear I should,
yeah, okay.
I think part of the reason it's in there is because of the requirements on fences and walls not to extend out into the front yard or have to be reduced in height when that happens. If you take it out of that section, then it
Would be-
becomes, I can take it all the way out to my property line with a hedge that's 7 foot tall. And not counting, if I'm gonna argue that my hedge is arborvitae and it will eventually grow 20 feet tall and shade my neighbor out, there is
There is an intent for that, I think, to
I-
purpose.
and I don't know if it's covered elsewhere. It's covered on a corner right now because you've got site distances that
Right.
would cover that. But it's not covered just yard to yard. And we
Right.
have that rule in order to be able to
looked at-
see down the street and do
Well,
those
we
things.
looked
So
at-
that's, I think that's why it's there.
On L1.
Well, I guess I would just counter though. I mean, I think there's a big qualitative difference between a fence and a wall and hedges or arborvitae or, you know,
For the purpose-
naturally green things. So,
I know what you're saying. I know that the height part of it, as far as being able to see whatever, not just on the side of the road and stuff, but I know we've got only a 30-inch requirement on L1 on the front property. Within the setback, we're talking about going to the property line.
I'm just thinking about in particular, like the situation where we've argued back and forth on the fence that was next to my house. Okay, now they can come back and plant that solid with something that grows up 10 feet and accomplish the same thing without a fence. That the point was that you don't block that view as you're from your house.
From your setback, yeah.
And I guess I don't know how to explain it other than like, for our situation, it is up against our house, so it is only blocking anybody that wants to look at our house, and it's 10 feet tall. But is it gonna fall under the same thing? Cause it's not near a property line. But if it falls under this, like, obviously, if we put it on a property line between two neighbors, you want the setbacks, you want the height restrictions, but technically I'm outside of the height restrictions right now, even though it's not next to a neighbor. So like, that's why I'm wondering if we should move organic materials into something else.
Well, we've
I'm
already got,
thinking-
you can't put, like in setbacks at one as far as with, between the houses, between the setbacks, you can't put anything kind of obstruct total view. And if we take this out, we're gonna still have it on L1 as far as being able to do that. This is just, for what? Particular, doesn't have to be for particular zoning. In other words, hold it to one zoning and not the other. Kevin makes a good point.
Yeah.
Kevin makes.
Which Kevin makes a good point.
Both of us. That's it, right.
The Evans make good points.
The other option is I can just do nothing with it. Just leave it, I can do nothing and leave it as is. And it can be interpreted later.
And it's not been a problem the way it is. So. If you're looking, if you're,
There's gonna be an issue of enforceability with this. This, the hedges,
What's your
at the
issue?
current state, it's gonna be hard.
what's your issue now?
There's a whole lot of houses that are gonna have to do a lot of trimming, to be compliant. It's not realistically enforceable. We're gonna be going through town being shrub police, and there's a lot of homes that are not gonna be compliant.
So you're saying even the intent of this was probably wrong. Correct?
I'm saying, I appreciate the intent of it. But when it comes to enforcing, it's gonna be quite a challenge. Especially when you do, because part of this forces 50% visibility, so in the winter, it may be 50% visible, it's summer, it's gonna be 100% blocked.
Bring that up. Something
So-
at least in the winter, then it's 100.
Maybe I just, everybody forget I brought that up and we'll leave it alone.
I think that's in the Sleeping Dogs Live.
What's next?
That might happen. What's next?
We just do a grandfathering. Everything, everybody goes out, takes a picture, grandfather.
Okay, I'm just gonna skip through the rest of this. Fence is permitted in residential. And Lake's already covered in their zoning, so I'll move on. We'll leave that one alone. So here's another one with some improved language. Temporary use, this is section 090 of Article 6, individual manufactured homes for temporary use. I haven't seen that, I haven't been here that long, but temporary use of a manufactured home shall be, it said by special use permit. We don't have a special use permit. The BZA should issue a temporary variance for special use. This should be a BZA matter, in my opinion. That's why I put this on here and put this language in here. And it would be a temporary variance that the BZA could determine.
Talking about like a construction job site.
I'm talking that, or if we have a big flood and people's houses get washed away and instead of,
Use for it. See.
Yeah.
Have the time,
that tornado probably more.
they have the time stand even in our city.
It would be up to the BZA. I think that'd have to be, since they're special use and temporary.
Somebody gave it to you. That girl.
Right, that was just a permit to run a business for. whatever.
Yeah.
But this right here, to me, as far as it says temporary variance, I think the temporary would mean depending on what it would be.
The BZA would define it
Right.
at case by case basis.
If it's a tornado, yeah, they might want to keep it for 2 years, I don't know.
Let's hope it doesn't get that bad, but we do have this ordinance, so I just wanted to make sure the language was clear in here. So does anybody want any changes? Is this okay? You want to do something else?
I would just say, I think that leave that with the BZA because there's so much that's gonna be out of a homeowner's control, like how
Right.
quickly insurance companies move and pay out and so forth.
I guess the other question I have is, it says it needs to be connected to a proper water and sanitary sewer system, so if the best they can do is have an RV or something like that, and they can't necessarily have a hookup, they're gonna tear their house down to the board.
So an RV is gonna fall under something different than what a manufactured home definition is. They're different definitions that we'll actually get into here a little further down. So if you're okay with this language, I'll move on, or if you want to wait to hear the other.
Hear the other.
Okay, so I'm gonna go to the next section. Section 100 says everybody has to have a key lock box. We need to be more specific. We use Knox box key lock boxes. Knox box is what the fire department has keys for, and that's a system that most places are set up on, and Culver's certainly set up there. So it needs to be more specific. So it says Knox box. That's why I wanted to change that language.
You want,
What exactly does that pertain
you
to?
want, you want.
So a Knox box is a little safe that bolts to the side of a building, and it has a key to the door. So if the fire department gets called out at 2 a.m. and they need access into that building right away, they have a choice of kicking the door in, breaking it down,
Which is.
or they have a master key that's very secure. The fire department has a lot of procedures around that, but it's very secure. And that key, they can open every safe, every Knox box, and take the door key out and go in without causing damage to the building.
Schools have installed them for active shooter. The new executive storage will have a knock box to access. It's supposed to be all commercial.
So it's in our ordinance to put them in. It's just not specific to what to put in. So this just makes it more specific.
That's the guy who built.
Sorry. I wrote that. And the reason it says that is because Knox recommends that you don't use their name because it's discrimination, because you might change it in the future. So they say you should put it in there that you go with the system the town is using, understanding that 90% of the country uses Knox, but even in their sample language, it says a lockbox instead of using.
I'll go back. I have some literature. I'll go back and look at that.
And it may have changed because I wrote that probably 10 years ago.
It became
No
the
longer
common
than that.
nomenclature now in the media.
It was written before you even started up there.
It was written when the Garden Court apartments
Exactly.
went in because they used them at all their places and they asked for it and the town agreed that it was a good policy to have.
Yeah.
So that's 2012.
So I'll verify that language with what Knox boxes with our literature is.
I'm summing from it, I was going to say that you wanted to avoid putting it in the ordinance and yet wanted to practically specify there was not Knox boxes, say that 10 times or fast. You could put in the ordinance that it's the style of lockbox will be designated by the fire department or some, whatever authority you want to give it to. Someone like that. That would be, the ordinance wouldn't specify, but the people need to use it could specify which one they want.
Box of choice.
No.
So designated by Bremen Fire Department.
Or Culver Fire Department, probably. Yeah.
Why did I say Bremen? I've been going to a lot of towns lately, so I apologize. So Culver Fire Department,
Whoever, or by the building inspector, right, whatever you think's feet.
Fire Department.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Or EMS.
And by the way, just a side note on these, they can be for residential also.
It's primarily the fire.
Those are the two
Well,
main-
Well, the fire department holds the keys. I don't think the police even hold the key to it.
No. Got the key to it, or you got access?
Who?
Anybody, fire department?
There is a master key for the town, and I believe there are 4 to 5 keys that the town has. Some of them are with the fire department, some are with the ambulance. I thought there was one with the police.
I'm under the assumption police have one. The EMS definitely does, and so does the fire. Fire and the police have access to them the most, but EMS has them too.
I believe the town has a contract or some kind of agreement with Knox because they accepted Knox's system.
Right.
So what the ordinance needs to say is you will use the accepted system for the town. So if the town changes it, which would be, everybody be pissed because you already got the boxes, you can't change them. But it should be accepted, but they just told me not to use the name. That's,
Okay, good. That's good. I'm glad you said that.
I understand that.
I'll clarify that part.
Yeah. I guess that means.
Emergency services.
I just like the term system designated by the Culver Fire Department.
Emergency service, that's my blanket term.
Okay.
Stay here all night.
Okay, so I'm gonna move on to the next one, mobile home parks. Just some different language in here, a little bit added, actually. There's a definition in here that talks about mobile homes. So mobile homes are actually called manufactured homes, is their real term, not to be confused with modular homes. So manufactured home definition is here just for clarification. And then it goes on after that definition is it used to say type. Kind of hard to find types on Google, but I can sure find a lot of information on class. So class A and B, and what you'll see on the next page is actually a chart of what explains those A and B and C are. So by looking at that, do we want it to simply just say class A? I think the reality is class A and B would both be could be both be in-kind replacement. So we don't allow new ones to go in, but we would allow somebody, if for instance, it burned down, to replace it with something.
Where do these classes come from? Is that some sort of universal definition?
It is. It is. I did a lot of looking. When it said type before, I couldn't find that, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of information out there on class for mobile home.
I just, this is a technical matter. If you wanted to just say class A, B, C, and then whatever that guiding document is, so if they change the specs, we don't have to redo the ordinance again. I don't know if that makes sense.
So you mean not have so leave the table off, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, just in case that the body that decides what a class ABC is changes those definitions, we don't have to mess with the ordinance.
That's very reasonable.
So what body necessarily designates classes?
Somebody in Walker Woodside.
Right.
So there's a mobile home industry standards. I forget, MIH? I can't, I'm not sure. There's an organization that sets standards for manufactured / mobile homes.
As I was going, I'm not trying to derail or anything, but from what I'm reading on the back, the class A would be considered a double wide then? What would be classified as a double wide?
So they have single wides that are, I haven't seen an 18-foot, but they definitely have single wides that are 16-foot.
Double wide mobile homes, and you got double wide modular homes, double wide manufactured. I bought a modular in 1979. It was considered a manufactured home. Now, I'm learning that they're no longer a modular and a manufactured home, but two different things.
Yes. So the question is, are we okay with using the classes term? And is A and B acceptable? You want it just to be A? Do you want it to AB, ABC? And do you want to, which I think is a good recommendation, lose the table?
But for losing the table, you'd have to send them somewhere where the classifications of the updated A, B's and C's.
I think it's not going to come up, actually.
I don't think so.
I highly doubt it because Cover doesn't allow manufactured / mobile homes in town. And if there are any existing ones, they could possibly be, without looking, I'm pretty sure they could be replaced in kind, but that's about it. And definitely if they had like a disaster or fire or something like that.
Mhm.
I guess that falls into the temporary use of one in town. It's like, if it's going to need to have the hookups.
So this one's talking about permanent residents.
Hey, could be in a specific zoning.
It is, it's, the zoning is very strict, but there's already some that are in place that are
Right.
grandfathered in.
Grandfathered in, right.
So in the event something happens there, this is all just to clarify that.
Yeah, I don't see it. Or your manufactured home, I'm not against that. If it's actually a modular and not a,
So for this discussion, I just want to know if it's okay to change this to class. Put the definition in, and if classes A and B are okay. And do you want the table or not? Not table this table.
They leave the table in for definition, because if it's not going to necessarily dictate A and B over C, the table's just a reference. So I would just know what class of mobile manufactured home you're looking at.
there you go. Good definition.
I just ask what you want.
I think Joel. Right.
So does anybody wanna, and we're going for that too. I'm curious about a manufactured home does not constitute a modular one that is built offsite, brought in and put on a foundation.
Two separate things.
Two separate things. Okay. Terminology has changed over the years. I lived next to a house that was brought in 4 pieces and put in a day, so that's considered manufactured in my book, but my book's different.
If it's not built on a trailer frame, then it's a modular.
Okay.
For this definition right here,
Steel frame with
for the new definition that I'm going to put in there.
mobile.
Thank you. Anybody else have any opinion about it? So let the language stand with the table.
Okay. So if you see in here, it says section 1 sub 70 public campgrounds. This is just a note to clean it up. They've got the heading in the wrong spot. None of the language changes. It's just a location thing. They put the line 4 paragraphs off. So it's just a cleanup. And then section 180, public walkways and curbing consistent with our complete streets ordinance. Right now it says streets ordinance, but we do have our complete streets. It was something newer. So that was just to clarify that. I don't know if you have any questions. A lot of you probably voted in on the complete streets
Actually, it says with the complete the streets ordinance.
with
We got a
the
complete street or
I'm just saying there's a typo in the actual copy. Not in what you gave us, but in the document that's exactly.
Oh. Another good catch. There's a lot of that.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. And we'll go down to the last paragraph under 180. Such sidewalks and curbing shall meet specifications are determined by the Culver Town Council and shall be available upon request at the Culver Town Hall. In some cases, the building commissioner may waive this requirement to protect public safety. So this is talking about sidewalks. So when someone's doing significant improvement or new construction, they have to put sidewalks and curbs in. That's part of our ordinance. But there's come up times now where it's a bad choice to do that. For instance, we may have to take a row of trees out just for somebody they're growing where the sidewalk should be. And we don't want to take those trees out. The Culver's trying to get more trees in town. So that just gives a little more, it's more specific and gives more latitude for that.
Right.
Because this came up recently, actually.
in the past, we have waived it requirement because there's no other sidewalk on that road, whatever, and when it did put some in, it was in that condition that they had to do with theirs.
So there's a lot to this. We have sidewalks that are by the curb and then the next block they're in 3 or 4 feet and then we have them by the curb. So this gives us, it'll give me some latitude when I'm talking to the people about this. Any comments on that? Okay, I'll move forward. Number 190, sign regulations, just adding some state codes that override local codes in here regarding political signs. I've had quite an education in that lately. So I thought it prudent to put this, I thought that prudent to put this subject in here because there's a period of 60 days before the election and 6 days after where state code overrides local ordinance, and people can put in up to, as long as it doesn't cause a public safety issue, they can have up to 32 square foot signs. 4x8. So there was nothing, there was really nothing the town can do about it, but if we have it in here, it's clarification. And it's also public safety that is included in this. So we have that to fall back on, so these don't end up blocking out some kind of view for drivers or pedestrians.
That was in the ordinance already. Yeah.
So that, I would add that we just add that reference for state code for future. It's come up in other towns here recently that I know of.
Been stated that political signs.
But there's also, because it's state code, so many days after an election,
Right.
regardless of who wins or loses, it's got to go on.
Right. Even ours.
Okay, so the next section, H, permission for signs. It used to say you had to have written consent and proof of such consent had to be filed with the building commissioner. That's never happened since I've been here. I don't know if it's ever happened, period. So simply put the language, no sign shall be placed on private property without the consent of the owner or agent thereof, period. In other words, go up and ask permission.
I didn't know need written permission. Anytime, I even like.
So to clean that one up, and then under 270, flood hazard standards, duties of the administrator. It takes out quite a bit of this. The building commissioner or the building official shall implement this ordinance. Period. The building commissioner for the town of Culver is appointed to review all development and subdivision proposals to ensure compliance with this ordinance. We don't have a zoning administrator. It's more titles. It's just to clarify that who specifically should be doing this. In the section after that, C, improvement location permit. Again, it's another one where building commissioner or Marshall County Plan Director, because the county is issuing the permits. So it clarifies that as well. And then finally, 280, height restrictions and establishing grade. Just a little politically correct change all the way at the bottom of that. It says owner may set up and allow building commissioner to verify transit or level, and there was also a typo, if owner so chooses. It used to say if he chooses.
I would appreciate that.
So with that, to go back to the beginning, it was leave the height of the structures the same.
I think that's the only one.
And then ultimately, that's going to lead to us doing away with our building code, which is another thing probably for the town council. And then it's state that we have this as like the county has. These are what we're going to apply, and those will be ours. And then get some links available for that as we move forward. And the rest is language. The only other thing was fences, hedges, and walls. My note says leave it alone.
Section 230, which is the one about visibility requirements, actually does mention hedges and goes into detail, including the picture of how you let have tree. So if you do have a coverage system in place, then it's going to be okay. Page 115.
Okay, good. Anything else controversial? I'll look into and make sure we have the correct language for our key lock boxes. And make sure that it's most likely to be a system designated by the Culver Fire Department. Nick,
Just remind me for minutes in the motion that's forthcoming, where'd we land eventually on hedges?
to leave that ordinance alone,
Okay,
don't change it.
okay.
And then the motion will be to approve the proposed changes to Article 6 of our zoning ordinances.
So move.
Second. All those in favor, vote aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries.
I'm done.
Are you?
was
Old
fun.
business, new business.
Enjoyed that first one.
Nice to clean up a little bit of the language.
And, now there's a lot of old business, and I'm not bringing it back.
Anybody got any new business? Citizen input. Anyone online?
We have one person online, but not hearing any comment.
Moving on. Any other points? Commissioner? Yep. Any concern?
Yeah, you got one for missions out there.
I just had a question.
Yeah.
So, is the, is the, Dunes moved to May because they don't have those, the 500,000 year flood studies?
I'll defer to Mr. Dante.
The reason for the deferment to May is several reasons. Number one, the town wasn't willing to entertain a special session for you guys. We're trying to be respectful. So we asked and there was absolute compliance by Culver Equities to wait till May. The second reason we wanted to be able to do it, one of the major concerns is that western detention area. We want to make sure our perk testing is done. Scott has had enough time to validate it.
Mhm.
That's the last really linchpin to this thing
Okay,
in terms of numbers. And to rush that, to try to get it in 2 days, it would disrespect the process. But having said that, that's the final hurdle. They've complied on every other request that we've had. They're gonna present it to you so you make up your own mind, but they have been able to present the data that we asked them. It'll be, I want the plan put in front of you and I don't want it to be explained. I want the plan to speak for itself with its numbers and let you make your decision. That was the one caveat to it all. And so in order to do that, we asked for the numbers. That was it. Simple.
So would we be getting a copy of that beforehand, or is it going to come?
When I get the copy of the perk numbers for that testing, because that was the one thing, as well as the reconfiguration of that northern relief area for the water plant.
Mhm.
Absolutely. We do have that. Scott's looking at it. That's the only reason I haven't been able to pass that on. I'll try, if you don't mind reminding me, but I'll put that on my agenda to present that to you guys at least probably a week before, if that's okay.
So special session for us a week before.
That is up to you to decide if you want to schedule a special session to discuss those numbers in private, or not private, but independently. That's up to the planning commission. I'll be happy to present that information.
I hate to volunteer for another meeting,
But I would like
I think,
somebody to explain.
I think
the
would be
numbers
nice.
involved.
I think in something this big,
And when you say somebody and you point at me, I'm gonna contact Scott Seifel, the engineer again, and have him bring those numbers up with him.
you did have to do as far as the 8-inch, 10-inch or 16-inch or whatever.
They've absolutely factored that in. They've looked at that. Scott, again, I'm looking at Scott to nod his head. This is all engineering. I understand enough to know, but not know. So when he nods his head, I'm okay. And so he nods his head on this, and that was the last meeting was this perk number.
So we have got that.
We do, according to Scott.
It was only the
And
two
again,
things
having
we-
that work session, we'll be able to confirm your questions directly with Scott and not have me translate for it. I think that's probably the best way to do it.
I get it.
Mhm.
Okay,
Will they be prepared by May 21st?
will it be ready?
Well, actually,
You're Skippy. The perk test was done yesterday. And the numbers are gonna be processed to Scott by the end of the week, according to the developer. And we should be able to have that by next week, so we have plenty of time. I'd like to try to schedule it for the first week of May, not putting it right on top of the second week for the convenience of the committee.
okay.
That way you guys have time to question and consideration rather than putting it right up against the meeting.
I'd like to have 15 days
I like that.
for legal notice.
That's fine.
We're gonna, I will have to, it's a work session. We have to put a legal notice. on
We
that.
do, and so we'll have to get that in and we have turnaround. We have to, some specific dates on that, but would you mind putting a note on that? That the commission has asked for that and we'll make the appropriate arrangements. I'll get the numbers basically and bring Scott in. That's my job.
Well, that first meeting is 3 weeks away, so that should be enough time.
If you get it in tomorrow, yeah.
I would think. We have to check.
But the-
He needs 15 days.
The problem is the publication dates are very specific. You have to have them in at a certain point because of the turnaround on the newspaper. We have to like this on very unreasonable, like you have to have like weeks in advance on.
That's why,
this.
that's why I asked for 15 days.
That's why we're
It
asking.
has to be a minimum of 10 days.
Yeah.
Before the meeting, since it's a legal
Well, we'll be-
notice.
I think-
And then you have to have time for the paper to publish it and throw in a couple weekend days.
So if it's doable within that timeline, would everybody be amenable to a May 7th meeting?
I'll be in Chicago on the 7th.
Okay. Everyone else, what time would be beneficial for everyone? 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock,
What day would that be on?
it would be a Tuesday,
Be a Tuesday?
or we could move it. to
No, in the
another.
meeting on Tuesday, generally now, unless it's redevelopment.
We're clear, if you're talking about the 7th, we would be clear. Redevelopment meets on Thursdays before the town council. So I'm clear any day that week. I'll prioritize it. It's fine.
Wednesday.
Will you be back on Wednesday?
And no, I have a commencement thing to go to, so I'm going the whole week.
Oh,
7 on, so.
sorry.
No one.
Sorry, I'm not going insane. There's a mosquito in the room.
Their story.
Things, right? What mosquito, Kevin?
Dan,
My hands on it.
there's
How
a
about Tuesday, the 7th?
LMC meeting on the 7th.
Pardon?
LMC meeting on the 7th.
That's a new guy.
So Dan and I would have a conflict on the 7th. For the next environmental council.
I was gonna say, the 8th, is there anybody with conflicts? Would be the following day, Wednesday? Or Wednesday?
Are you on Don's schedule?
I'd work.
For Ron,
Sure.
work for you.
We're good. Prefer to have a,
Like your
Wednesday,
Wednesday,
reach out to Bobby and John too.
Don't need 5 for one.
Yeah, but as many members. as
But I
possible.
think more numbers that can make it, we want to make it available.
Mhm.
Everyone.
And if we can print the minutes out and get them to you, John, or if you want to submit any questions.
And the thing is, when you look at the plans, I think that I would ask in the work session at least, there will be things that are, and Scott will explain this, that they're functional, they're to municipal code and they're good. We've planned for a lot of different things. What I would like to know from the planning committee is Danny shared with me, don't give up on that road, right? Keep looking at access to 17. That's something that we've went to, but that's something I gotta keep hearing. So where are my future concerns? Because I think people have this feeling that once we put this thing online and go, that the conversation is over, and it's just simply not. We've got to incorporate this in or it's going to be difficult, right? And if I can anticipate from you guys' perspective where issues may be needing attention, that would be greatly appreciated too.
So you want, not just what we want technically, but
Yeah, I mean, just as ideas, right? Where should I focus my attention? Hey, don't forget about, Mill Street is one of those things, right? Mill Street, or don't forget about the 17 access, right? And understanding where that relationship is. What are you gonna do about Davis Street, right? Have you confirmed how fast will you get the capacity back? Those type of questions help me refocus myself. It's not an up or down vote. It's something that has to be online over the next 10 years.
yeah,
And my greatest fear is that you start seeing buildings popping up and everybody ignores how we can integrate
Yeah.
or where the issues are,
Mhm.
right? There's always room for improvement. There's always room to manage and manipulate what's existing, right?
Right, that's on your field, if it had the road access from 17, you wouldn't have near the process that you're looking at Davis and Maine and.
I think there's validity to it, and the conversations will happen at different points. At this point, that conversation has stopped, but it doesn't mean it's over, right? There's always that idea that as this thing builds, you're gonna make realizations.
Yeah.
And that's the nice thing about the phasing approach that the developer is using. We're phasing and bringing 2 phases online of about 220. Now, the gap between 3 and 4 may be slower or faster, right? It depends, but we're gonna get a picture of what we're onlining. And we may get a better understanding of the clientele in terms of full versus part-time, which may allow a little better data set to make engineering decisions. Because I've said it, and I think there's some validity to it. You're gonna ever engineer or under engineer unless you have an understanding of your numbers.
Right.
And over time, it's easier to go back and put something in as you realize that it's needed, rather than spending $1 million putting something in and then saying, whoops. And I think there's been examples of that in the past, right? Where we put in infrastructure that's sitting there. And we spent $500,000, $600,000 and we're trying to figure out why. And I'd rather avoid that question.
Right.
But we have to anticipate too.
Right. I mean, just since we're talking about it, I mean, Dave and I, we've been talking about this. As far as access, it doesn't necessarily have to be required in our approval or disapproval because of it.
No, it doesn't.
Because we can even look at amendments as far as, since they're doing it in phases. I mean, we can actually require another look at this after. phase
Well, we
one.
built that into the economic agreement. When we talked to them about issuance of the bonds, and when they put a market delay in, we both the developer and the town found it mutually beneficial to put a pause session at the end of phase two. Now, I don't know how long that is, right? That could be a small gap. Now, there is infrastructure that's gonna go in for 3 and 4 because of the Ready Grant.
Right.
But there is a pause structure because they don't want to build a bunch of shells that sit empty either. So
Right.
they wanted the market delay. Well, we want to make sure we can anticipate where we're at. So there will be a delay for review. And again, any type of suggestion that you guys put down will be helpful, right? And that may be something we talk about. And when we're approving this subdivision, we're approving the plans, but we want to keep the conversation open to growth, and that may require a road or some reconfiguration out on the south side of town. And that's not unreasonable to request, because we've never had this type of development on the south side. It wasn't built for this type. I mean, it wasn't anticipated, right? The town was centered more around the academy back to the north, right?
Right.
So one of the major issues we have is that you're looking at infrastructure that you've got one access route to. Because town has always been to the north. And that's something we need to discuss. We can't stick our heads in the sand, but there's multiple solutions to it. And the ongoing conversation, I think, is required. As we online these things. So I just appreciate it. And hope you guys can. I like the idea of having a planning session. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
That was a great idea, and we can get those numbers. And I'll contact Scott to make sure that Dave works with him.
Oh, yeah.
Understand, I want to be respectful. He's been very,
Oh, yeah.
very
Did
coordinated.
you settle on a time?
He has been
No, I
very,
don't
very
think we
helpful.
did.
I mean, he didn't.
He's with his weight and goals too. Do it at 6. 6 is okay with me, Steve.
6 is probably fine.
6 o'clock, Wednesday, May 8th.
May 8th, yeah.
I think, and then we'll send out, we'll get a notice on that, a reminder, right?
Yeah, because I think once we get a public.
Steve.
And if you need a motion.
Yes, once we get on the calendar, Dan, once
If
we
we
get
get
on
a
the
motion,
calendar.
meeting out.
Steve will send us, he'll shoot us an email.
Let's go ahead
And
and
post it online too on the website.
That's contingent upon Scott Seipel being able to make it.
Right.
It's
So
absolutely.
we have a contingency, we'll have to get a contingency date if he can't do that.
Let me confirm it, then we'll go from there.
Okay.
Is that okay?
Yep.
Yeah, that way we don't have
And
that.
leave this open, then we will need a motion for the meeting.
I was just gonna note that there was consensus, the work session be held May 8th, 6 PM, subject to the engineer's availability.
There you go.
That's good. You word poet warrior.
So I'll send notices out.
Okay.
If there's details, I've also come acutely aware lately that if we're doing emails and it's any kind of business type thing, we have to be careful. So I may send it out in small batches to 2 of you, like at a time, instead of a whole group.
As long as we're not responding and having conversation.
Problem is, we can't be sure of that.
We can.
Oh,
That's the problem. The only thing that can go out in terms of meeting notices.
I can send a meeting notice out, but if they start having some more, like change of date and such, I'll be the center point and you can work through me so we don't end up having a quorum
We can have.
unintentionally.
Right, and the adage better safe than sorry on that one really
Yeah.
applies.
We have to remain sensitive to that.
Thank you very much. Any other members' concerns?
Nope.
All right, next meeting is May 21st, 2024.
I make a motion.
Do it.
Good picture.
Second? All those in
John
favor?
beat you to it.
Aye. Aye.
Yeah.
All those opposed? Meeting adjourned.
There you go.